Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Welcome. I'm your host, Nikki Lowe, executive and leadership coach. And here on this podcast, I'm all about combining the latest insights on psychology, leadership, and coaching to support high achieving women to combine their career and motherhood in a more successful and sustainable way. And today I'm going to be exploring what I think is quite an intriguing concept that actually intertwines psychology, nature, and the female body. And it's the concept of the fertile void. And it's a powerful concept at this time of year. And I'm recording this podcast at the beginning of January 2024. And in the Northern Hemisphere, we're deep in winter. We've got the shorter days and the longer nights. Nature is sleeping because of the low temperatures. Many of the plants and animals are in their hibernation period. And it looks like nothing is happening. But winter is a deep and potent time. And that is the power of the fertile void. And in her book, Rituals for Life, Isla MacLeod shares that although it appears that the natural world is dormant beneath our feet, miracles are unfolding. Within the seeds, there is a stirring and emergence of life that takes place within the dark when unseen creative forces are at play. From the fertile nothingness, the first sparks of life emerge. But in our modern world, we tend to be in that January, new year, new me vibe. And for many years I did this, sucked into that culture of feeling the need to nail the first few weeks of January, and if I didn't, then I'd feel like I'd lost momentum or positivity that the new year brought. But if I'm honest, it didn't feel natural. And it often took far more energy than was necessary to kickstart the year. And it often left me feeling like I was criticising or berating myself for not being more motivated or more productive. And it took me years to realise I was working against nature, against, I suppose, my body and actually our natural development. Because even in the self-development world, it wants to tell us that this time of year is the year that we need to get to it, get on it, be with it. But actually, this approach ignores the power of the fertile void. And I actually need to take you back probably about 15 years to give you context into how I first discovered the concept of the fertile void. So 15 years ago, I was about 3 years into my executive coaching business. So I'd launched it and was 3 years into it. And I'd built up, momentum and some success in my business. And I was working with more and more senior and successful clients. And I just started working with a new client. And he was head of business development for a successful financial services company. And the best way to describe him, he was a really powerful in his male energy, an intense character. And during our coaching sessions, I began to feel out of my depth. I was feeling quite intimidated by him, which obviously when you're somebody's coach, that's not ideal. What I now know was that I was actually dealing with a narcissistic client, my first proper rodeo with a narcissist. And I hadn't got the experience to be able to give it words at the time, but I knew I was out of my depth and that I needed more support. And I kind of was thinking, what support do I need? And I remembered an article that I'd read in the Coaching at Work magazine. And I'd read it quite a few months before, but it kind of stuck with me. And I went and dug out my magazine because at that time it was a physical magazine. And I reread the article. It was written by a really highly experienced executive coach and supervisor. And when I read it, it really spoke to me, and it just spoke to the experience that I was having with this client. So I reached out to the author, and the lady was a lady called Marion Gilly. And I contacted her because she was also a coaching supervisor. And I asked her to become my supervisor. And it was probably the start of one of the most powerful kind of professional development experiences that I've done and continue to do. So Marion is and was an incredible Gestalt therapist by background, and had become an incredible executive coach and then a coach trainer. And if you've not heard of Gestalt, it's a type of therapy and is an approach to psychotherapy, but I'd not come across it before. And working with Marion, I got this like masterclass in what Gestalt was and the impact it could have in coaching. And I've since gone on to train in Gestalt coaching, probably, I've been trained in Gestalt for about a decade now. But Gestalt therapy was founded by a guy called Fritz Perls, and the best way to describe it, because it's a really difficult thing to describe, but Gestalt encourages us to live in the present moment and actually find meaning in the spaces between kind of our actions and our experience. Where some type of therapy or personal development is all future orientated, Gestalt is all about working in the present moment. So if I was coaching a client and they're talking about, I've got this big presentation I've got to do and I'm feeling nervous, in Gestalt, we would encourage somebody to go, and what are you experiencing right now as you talk about it? Because that's the only reality. If we talk about a future event and we're talking about what might happen in the future, we're not dealing with real sensations and real experiences. So Gestalt is all about that. And in Gestalt, there's a kind of part of it that's central to the theory is this idea of the fertile void. It's like a temporary pause that allows for reflection and growth. And a big part of how it is explained is by something called the cycle of experience. And it's simply a way of tracking how we experience the world around us and interpret it. And it starts with a sensation. So simply this cycle starts with a sensation. And I'll give you a really simple example to bring this alive. So it's the sensation that you need the toilet. That's the first step. The second step in the cycle is that you then go to recognition. So you become aware that you've got that sensation. The third step is it moves to mobilizing. So you get the energy to focus and start to decide and plan. So with this example, you start to think, I need to go to the toilet. The fourth phase is that you move into action. So you kind of engage and experiment and you kind of move towards addressing the sensation. So in this example, you would kind of move towards the nearest toilet or the best toilet. The next phase is contact. And this is where you feel that you're completing and meeting the need of the sensation. So in this example, you would actually go to the toilet. And the next phase is satisfaction. So you feel like you've hopefully completed that sensation. And we all know that feeling of relief after emptying your bladder. The next phase in this cycle of experience is withdrawal, where we let go or lose interest and investment in the original sensation. So in this example, we move on. We've gone to the toilet and we kind of forget about it. It's done. And then we move into the final and really important phase, which is the fertile void. And the technical term for this is the undifferentiated field. And it's this final phase that is often neglected. It happens after we've completed the cycle of experience and before we begin to be energized by the next sensation. And the fertile void is all about being there in full awareness of yourself in the world and allowing the emerging of what will be. It's kind of being without an agenda, ready to respond to what we would say in Gestalt about the next emerging figure in our awareness. And it's a time to be undirected and acknowledge really the unknown. And it's almost a surrender to, I suppose, the emergence of some completely new, unanticipated thought, feeling or desire. And it can be linked to the Buddhist notion of emptiness or nothingness, from which springs kind of this new awakening or creative energy. But in our modern world, we don't allow time for the fertile void. We don't acknowledge or honour it. But also we're so quick to move on to the next thing. And if you think about technology, is actually stimulating and triggering simultaneous sensations. So we've not even completed one cycle of experience before another is started. So we're kind of almost void of fertile voids. We're literally not having them. But the fertile void is necessary and kind of powerful preparation for the next thing. We need the fertile void to create kind of space and energy. And if we push past that, we miss the gift that it gives us. Kind of because there's always the inevitable spark of inspiration or insight that the fertile void gives us. It's kind of the precursor to creation. And I love the work of Kate Northrop in this area. And if you've not come across Kate, she joined me as a guest on my podcast in episode 29. And she's author of a book called Do Less, The Revolutionary Approach to Time and Energy Management. And Kate is an entrepreneur who has actually integrated the wisdom of female bodies into how we work, and particularly how we may run a business. And Kate has actually integrated the wisdom of her mum, who's a very famous gynecologist in the US, who is the author of Women's Bodies and Women's Wisdom. And she's one of Oprah Winfrey's top influencers. And Kate talks about this kind of fertile void being linked to the seasons in nature, and the fertile void really about being winter. It's about where we rest and we hang out in the unknown. We might reevaluate or lay fallow or pause. And in her work, Kate teaches that the fertile void is the same energy as the season of winter or the new moon, if you follow the moon cycles, and actually the phase of the menstrual cycle where we bleed. Kate talks about the fertile void feeling deeply uncomfortable, both because it's about taking a break, and we're not good at breaks for that contemplation and integration, and that rest isn't kind of valued in our culture, but also because we can feel under pressure. And she talks about it takes pressure to create a diamond, but the more we can embrace that fertile void instead of pushing against it, the deeper we'll go and the higher we'll fly. And I really felt the power of this in January 2021. I'd spent the lead up to Christmas 2020 launching kind of this huge project, and it was really exciting, and it was called the Thrive Summit, where I curated even this incredible lineup of speakers who all kind of recorded videos, and I integrated it into this platform. And to get it ready for January, I'd really pushed myself to my limits. And to be honest, I'd underestimated the time and energy it would take. So I was working long days, long hours, all through that busy Christmas period, which is busy in life anyway. And I came into January, and that first week of January, I just felt rotten. My kidneys were aching and my back was aching. And I just thought, oh, I've sat at a desk for too long. My body doesn't like this. But it turns out I'd actually got COVID. And when I got that positive COVID test, I just kind of went, okay, I surrender. I give myself permission to just totally rest. Obviously, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. So I just totally switched off. And I was at home with no goals, no intentions other than to rest and recover. And within a week of doing it, I had like this powerful experience. I can only kind of relate it to like this physical experience of boom, I had this download of all this inspiration for my business. Like my business strategy just came to me, and I had this profound like moment of, okay, there is so much power in this rest if I can surrender to it, but it doesn't come easily to me. And my guess is it doesn't come easily to you. And I think it's interesting to think about, particularly as women, that fertile void and this time of year, winter, really relates to our menstruation and our menstrual cycle, because the female menstrual cycle actually aligns with the natural rhythms of the seasons. And you may not have heard it, but if you haven't, I'll share with you that you can map the cycle with the seasons. So winter is often referred to as menstruation when we bleed. Spring is our follicular phase. Summer is our ovulation phase. And autumn is our luteal phase. And knowing this can actually be really empowering. it can help you understand the subtle shifts in your mood and energy. And interestingly, me and my team, we're predominantly women. We decided probably about 6 months ago that we were going to share and track our cycles. And it has given us so much information on, like, if I'm having a really tough day or I'm lacking inspiration, it will take Lauren, my business manager, to go, but yeah, just remember you're in your winter. Like, you're not meant to be kind of in inspiration. And getting to know that and have it at our kind of reflected back is really powerful. So winter marks the first day of your menstrual bleed, and it's when our progesterone and estrogen, kind of our reproductive hormones, are at their lowest. And it can lead to like menstrual fatigue and that general feeling of, I just feel a bit rotten. A menstruation like winter represents a phase of rest and renewal. And actually, hundreds of years ago, we used to go into something called the red tent, and women would kind of rest and renew in there and be looked after. And this kind of process gives a chance for self-reflection and creating that internal space that's very similar to that fertile void that we're talking about in terms of the Gestalt or winter season. But in our culture, we kind of stigmatise our cycle, and it holds stigma, or we can tend to feel frustrated that we've been held back by it. But if we can view it as a natural cyclical process, and it's actually aligned with the principles of the fertile void. So if we can reframe our perspective, we can kind of honour our cycle, and it promotes more self-care and that kind of deeper, empowering connection with our bodies. And I love how the author Blair Hayes writes about winter. She talks about we associate winter with death, but really it's a deep time of connection to what it means to be alive. As we witness nature giving in with grace and softness to the bite of winter, our own need to surrender to this slow season is reflected back at us. If we can be present to the inevitability of death and loss, we see in nature, we can begin to understand the way that these cycles show up in our own life. Plants and animals don't fight the winter. They don't pretend it's not happening and attempt to carry on living the same things that they lived in summer. And that quote comes from Catherine May in her book Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. They prepare, they adapt, they perform extraordinary acts of metamorphosis to get them through. Winter is a time of withdrawing from the world, maximising scant resources, vanishing from sight. But that's where the transformation occurs. Winter is not the death of life, but its crucible. Winter holds space for us to witness the beauty of the cycle of life and to understand that it's a biological imperative to experience this yearly winter in our minds, bodies and souls. In our relentlessly busy world, we try to avoid winter. We shy away from it, fearful of how it leaves us barren and bare. And yet, nature not only sends winter, but the very nature of winter also sends the space around it for us to retreat and heal. An occasional sharp wintering will do us good, writes Catherine May. We must learn to invite the winter in. We may never choose to winter, but we can choose how. For humans, winter is a time to slow down and prepare, to shed what we don't need and to rest. If we can take our cues from what's happening outside, we can reflect on the inside. So actually, this winter, the fertile void, is a creating space for self-discovery. It almost becomes this space that we can intentionally slow down and reflect, and gives us such a powerful opportunity for personal growth that kind of echoes what we're talking about in terms of the principles of the fertile void and Gestalt therapy. But it's really important to note that fertile voids don't just occur or align with winter. They can happen at any time. And I can reflect on times in my life where they've happened in the summer, for example. And I think winter is a perfect time to go into the fertile void if we can at all, possibly. But just recognise that they can happen at any time. And it might be a time when you're lacking inspiration or motivation, or you just can't connect to your vision or purpose. And if you can give yourself permission to surrender to that, it's really powerful, because if we can embrace that fertile void, we open the door to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the ever-changing tapestry of life. And I hope that this episode gives you the confidence to trust the fertile voids in your life. And I'm curious, have you ever experienced a fertile void? And you may never have given it that term, but as I've been talking, you may relate to a time where, you've just felt stuck or like nothing's happening and you're getting frustrated. I'm wondering, what did it feel like to you? But also, what did you learn? I'd love for you to drop me an email or send me a message on social media. I always read them, to tell me about your experience of fertile voids. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care. If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.